Premiere Elements has a very intuitive user interface that includes three main panels. Let's take a look at them now. On the top left here, we have what's called the monitor panel. This is where we're going to see all of the footage that we're working with. The monitor panel has your same controls as you would see in a DVD player or a VCR. Your play pause button, rewind, step back. Right here, this number is where you are in your project. This little icon is called the current time indicator, and you need to remember that because we're going to be using that quite often when we shuttle back and forth in our projects. Speaking of shuttle, this is a little shuttle, which lets you scan through your project at a slow or fevered pace. Next to it, you'll see the split clip tool, the text tool, and the freeze frame. Don't worry about those. We're going to talk about them in depth in another video. Now, below is the timeline or scene line. And this is actually where you're building your project that you can see in the monitor. These boxes here in the scene line are just clips that you decided to bring in from footage that you have in your project. And we'll talk about this task panel later. These little boxes in the scene line are what are called transitions. So you're transitioning from this clip to the dance clip on the right. This is a transition, and you've probably seen that in movies where it goes from one scene to the next and there's a little dissolve or some kind of a flip or anything. You can put a lot of different things in here, and there's some great options. Now, the scene line has some nice tools here as well. The pan and zoom tool, which allows you to move your clips, and we're actually going to do a complete video on this because it's a new tool. The smart trim mode, motion tracking, properties, audio tools, and markers. We're going to get into all of those in depth at a later video. Now, we have our video laid out here. This is a video that I edited called The Dance. And I just want you to know that in the timeline, which is where I like to work, it is the exact same clips as the scene line. So whichever version that you like to work in, it's fine because it's going to be on either side. In the timeline now, we don't have the current time indicator up here. We have it now down here. I can click and drag and scrub across to see where I want to be. And this shows me the current time here. I'm at 12 seconds and 20 frames. I'm at 23 seconds and 28 frames. So I can be really exact using this. Now the timeline has some very different tools. It has the selection tool. That lets you select different clips. And as you see, if I click on them, they're highlighting, which means they are active. I can also click and marquee around them and select them all. To deselect, just simply go off onto the side. Next to it is the time stretch tool. So if you want to speed things up or slow them down, you have that ability. And then the rest of the tools are the same as the scene line. One last thing on the timeline is the zoom in and zoom out tool. So you see how there might not be enough room to work with here for some reason. You can just click and drag it out and it spaces it out. It does nothing to the actual time. It just gives you more space to work with. And if you have a really big project, you can zoom it in and it turns out to be little. Okay. Also here, let's take a look at this. That's a little different. The scene line just has your video track here, your narration track. So if you want to do some narration, for example, if I was narrating this, I might talk about we're high on the building looking down. And then underneath that is your soundtrack. So what music are you putting underneath that? Now, we're going to talk about those in another video. In the timeline, you have video tracks and audio tracks. Elements comes with a default of 3 audio and 3 video tracks, which are right here. You can click on them and delete them if you want because they're empty, give you more space. You want your video 1 layer is basically going to be your background or bottom layer. So if you get into stacking video clips on top of each other, as we do in compositing later on, you need to know that video 1 will always be the first one in the back. Then on top of that would be 2 and then 3. Scrolling down here, we have our narration track and our soundtrack. And and they have down collapsible arrows. Also, if I go between the three panels, there's a little icon that's got two lines and two arrows up and down. That allows me to drag and resize the Elements interface. So if you need more real estate, it allows you to do that. Now let's go up to the task panel. The task panel is where you're going to import your media. And by media, I'm talking about your raw footage from your flip camera, your DSLR, an MP3 player, a DVD that you're trying to get footage from, your hard drive, etc. All of that's going to be imported into the project panel so that you can use it to create clips, which will go into the scene line or timeline, which will then be viewed into the viewer, the monitor window here. So within the project panel, you have icons here that allow you to look at the list view or the icon view. If you're ever in a folder and you want to come out, you can go up one level. This creates a new folder, so I have a new folder there. I can right-click and cut it. This lets you create a new item. We'll discuss all the new items later. And this is your clear or delete. So it also has an edit panel where you can add effects, transitions, titles, themes, and even clip art. Goes into disk menus here if you're creating DVD templates. And lastly, you can share. It's got a lot of sharing options. So if you went and edited a great video and you wanted to get it up on YouTube immediately, for example, that's available right there. So once you learn the basics of the three panels, editing is going to be as simple as 1, 2, 3.